In this video, we look at cross-categorial generalizations in X-bar syntax. So far, when we looked at phrases, we've looked at the different types that we have in English, namely noun phrases, adjective phrases, verb phrases, prepositional phrases, and adverb phrases. We didn't really look at their internal structure, and we didn't really look at the structural similarities between these kinds of phrases. What kind of similarities do I have in mind? Well, here are some of those similarities. All phrases have a head. So a noun phrase is headed by a noun, an adjective phrase is headed by an adjective, a verb phrase is headed by a verb, and so on. Phrases may have a complement inside them, and they may have modifying elements before and after the head. Let's look at some phrases from the textbook. This is example 8 from chapter 7. It's a verb phrase that could be part of the sentence, "They did not destroy the garden." The verb phrase here contains a number of elements. As you can see, it's got the element not, and then the verb and its direct object, the garden. We have a question mark category here because it's not immediately clear what should be in the place of the question mark. Similarly, in example 9, an analysis of the sentence. This is a noun phrase, and the noun here, analysis, has a prepositional phrase after it. This is actually its complement. It's a noun complement. But again, we have a mystery category indicated by the question mark. And in this adjective phrase, "so fond of coffee," we have an adjective as the head. And this adjective also has a complement in the shape of a prepositional phrase. And again, we have this mystery category indicated by the question mark. For verb phrases, we have a similar situation. We have an element in front of the head, the word quite, here labeled specifier, as in the other examples. Then we have the head in, and this head, the preposition, has a noun phrase, agreement, as its complement. Finally, an adverb phrase, much faster than me. The head here is faster, an adverb, preceded by much under the specifier node, and then a prepositional phrase which is the complement of the adverb faster. What all these phrases have in common is the abstract skeletal structure that you see on your screen now. So at the top here we have an XP. An X here stands for noun, adjective, verb, preposition, or adverb. So an XP can be a noun phrase, an adjective phrase, a prepositional phrase, and so on. This XP then branches onto two sides. On the left we have a specifier, and on the right our mystery category. Then below the mystery category we have the X, that's the head of the phrase, and then a complement, if one is present, because of course not always is there a complement in every phrase. What about this mystery category indicated by the question mark? Well, this is a category that's called X bar and usually indicated by a prime. And by prime, I mean a little vertical line next to the letter that labels the category, like this. So it's not an inverted comma, it's really a little line, a little dash that comes after N, A, P, and V. An adverb phrase also belongs here. This X bar category, so N bar, A bar, P bar, V bar, is an intermediate category between the phrasal level at the top of a tree and the lexical level at the bottom. So let's look at our tree diagrams with this mystery category inserted. Here's the verb phrase, not destroy the garden. As before, we have the word not under the specifier. The head of this verb phrase is destroy, and the garden is its direct object. Now what you see in this little subtree, because it's not the complete tree of a sentence, is that the direct object is a sister of the node V. And what that means, a sister, is that you go up from destroy, from the V node up to V bar, and then down one to the noun phrase the garden. And you can see quite clearly here that the V bar category is in between the verb phrase and the verb. So it's larger than just the verb, but smaller than the verb phrase. And what we'll say here is that the verb and its direct object together form a V bar node. Let's look at the noun phrase, an analysis of the sentence. The idea is the same. We have a specifier. In this case, it contains the determinative an. The head noun, analysis, takes of the sentence as its prepositional phrase complement. And the noun and the PP together form the category N bar, which is again intermediate between NP and N. For adjective phrase, the same idea applies. We have a specifier, so, the head, fond, and the complement of the adjective fond of coffee. And the adjective and the prepositional phrase together form an A bar, intermediate between AP and A. For the prepositional phrase quite in agreement, we have quite in the specifier position, the head in, which takes as its complement the noun phrase agreement. In between, P bar, in between PP and P. Finally, for adverb phrases, again, the same idea applies. We have much faster than me. Much is in the specifier position. The adverb faster is the head here, which takes as its complement the PP than me. And together, the adverb and its complement form the adverb bar. So in each case, we have the phrasal level at the top, and then to the left, the specifier, and to the right, the category with the little prime, which we call bar. So N with the prime is pronounced as N bar. And if we have an X in the tree, we call it X bar. So this is where the name X bar syntax comes from. X bar syntax was invented by Noam Chomsky in the early 1970s and has been around ever since that time. The other thing to notice in each of those trees is that the sister of the head of each phrase is the complement of that head, but there isn't always a complement. So we have verbs that take complements, usually direct objects, and there are verbs that don't take a complement. These are called intransitive verbs. Now, the similarities that we've just discussed between all these phrases, so the fact that they have a specifier and then a bar level and then a head, these similarities are called cross-categorial generalizations. Now, the question that arises is, how do we add adjuncts to these tree diagrams? We saw that each of the little tree diagrams we looked at had a specifier and had a complement, but we can also add adjuncts. So let's look at tree diagram 25 from the book. Not destroy the garden. That's the one we had earlier on. The specifier is not, the head is destroy, and the direct object is the garden. Now, if we want to add an adjunct to this, so for example, deliberately, then we can do so as in example 26. So here we have a specifier again, and then under the V bar node, we have the verb destroy, the direct object, and the adverb phrase, which functions as an adjunct, of course. But this tree diagram is not satisfactory, and the reason is that it's a flat structure. And what I mean by that is that the V, the NP, and the adverb phrase are at the same level. But the relationship of the noun phrase direct object, the garden, to the verb destroy, is not the same as the relationship of the adverb phrase deliberately to the verb destroy. The noun phrase direct object is much closer to the verb destroy than the adjunct deliberately is. After all, the direct object, the garden, is something that the verb destroy requires to be there. Whereas the adjunct, as we saw in our earlier video, is not obligatory, it's optional. So how can we improve on this? How can we avoid the flat structure? Well, we can do so by using a process called adjunction, and it works like this. Category B is adjoined to category A by first making B a sister of A, and then making that A and B together a daughter of a copy of the original node A. So the diagram shows how that works. So now you've got two nodes A in the final bit of this schematic representation, and that's how adjunction works. Let's look at some practical examples. So let's look at tree 33, an analysis of the sentence with tree diagrams. Now, as before, the head of this noun phrase is analysis, preceded by the determinative an, which sits under the specifier node. The direct object, as before, is a sister of the head noun of the sentence. The PP of the sentence is a sister of the noun analysis. But with tree diagrams in this noun phrase is an adjunct. And we want to signal in this tree diagram that the adjunct is further removed from the head than the complement. And the way to do that is by repeating the n-bar node. As you can see here, we've got two n-bar nodes, and then having the PP on the right-hand side. It works in a very similar way for the adjective phrase, so fond of coffee after dinner. Fond is the adjective that's the head of this adjective phrase. Of coffee is its complement. We know that, by the way, because you can't leave of coffee out. You can't say so fond after dinner. You have to be fond of something, and that's expressed by the prepositional phrase of coffee. After dinner, however, is an adjunct, and the way we can position the adjunct in the tree here is by repeating the A-bar node and putting the PP underneath the highest A-bar node. For the prepositional phrase quite in agreement about this, we again have the specifier quite. In is the head and agreement is the complement of the preposition, and then we need to accommodate about this. That's a prepositional phrase, and the way we do that is by repeating the P-bar node and putting the PP under the highest of these two P-bar nodes. Finally, for the adverb phrase much faster than me by far, again the principle is exactly the same. We have the adverb and its complement than me, and we repeat the adverb bar node to accommodate the prepositional phrase by far. So in each case, the principle is the same. If you want to add an adjunct to a phrase, you repeat the bar node. Adjuncts are always sisters of bar level categories, whereas complements are sisters of the head. Now remember that adjuncts are stackable, and what this means is that you can have more than one of them in a phrase or in a clause. So have a look at this tree diagram. It's number 41 in the chapter. A silly analysis of the sentence. Here we have just one adjunct. It's the adjective phrase silly, and we've accommodated this adjective phrase by repeating the n-bar node. The only difference with our previous example is that the adjunct is adjoined to the left here because it occurs before the head noun. The head noun analysis takes a prepositional phrase of the sentence as its complement, as before, and we see that this is the case because the PP is the sister of n. Now the adjective phrase silly is an adjunct, and it's a sister of the lower n bar. Now let's look at an example where we have two adjuncts occurring before the head. In example 49 from the book, not unthinkingly, deliberately destroy the garden, we have the adverb phrase unthinkingly and deliberately. Both are adjuncts and both need to be accommodated in this tree structure. Destroy in this example is the head verb, which takes the garden as its complement, as in the earlier example. And what we've done is we've repeated the V-bar node, not once this time, but twice, and that results in 3 V-bars. The first one accommodates the verb and its direct object. The next one higher up accommodates the adverb phrase deliberately, as well as destroy and the garden. And the topmost V-bar accommodates another adjunct, namely unthinkingly, as well as all the other material, deliberately destroy the garden. X-bar syntax claims that the structure of all phrases in English is the same, as shown on your screen now. So at the top of each phrase we have XP, where X stands for noun, adjective, verb, preposition, adverb, and so on. And this XP splits into 2, a specifier on the left and an X bar on the right. Now the specifier here is in brackets because there isn't always a specifier available. The higher X bar then splits into X bar on the left and an adjunct on the right. Now there isn't always an adjunct in each and every phrase, so that's also in brackets. However, there is always a head, which is X, which has as its sister a complement, if there is one. But again, the complement here is in brackets because there isn't always a complement there. But I hope you get the idea of X-bar syntax. It's rather neat. It allows you to characterize the structure of all phrases with a single skeletal schema that you see on your screen now. In the next video, I will talk more about clauses.